Now we're going to be bringing a conversation to you, recorded conversation. Yesterday we spent some time with former Kenyan international Aasif Karim. He has been here not so long ago. We were talking about the Kenya International Sports Film Festival, but we were talking about the previous edition. But now he shared some insights regarding how to move forward and how cooperation between not only the sports industry and the government, but as well as the sports industry, the film industries, Kenyan sports funds, really it's a whole affair of that needs everyone's cooperation for it to succeed. And we also shared something about cricket, how cricket has, of course, evolved since the days when, well, you could debate that it was not all-inclusive. Well, it's not entirely all-inclusive at the moment, but a few strides have been made. Now, here is the interview, or rather, here's the conversation that we had earlier yesterday with former Kenya international Aasif Karim. Now, of course, as most of us know, on Monday we had quite a session on Sports Check, of course, with Big Richard Munga, and our second guest actually had a lot to say about the sports industry. I'm talking about none other than Aasif Karim, also a former Kenyan international in tennis and cricket. We are going to be talking about how you, as a former sportsman, how it has influenced your whole mission to bring about sports film in the country. So just briefly, you'll give us just the background of the Kenya International Sports Film Festival, and then we're going to be talking about other matters in relation to that.
The concept of these sport film festivals has a history of, I would say, 100 years. So what I mean by that is when my forefathers came here 100 years ago, actually 1926, since then the family has been involved in sports at national and international level. You know, as we have three generations that played international sports for Kenya. My father, myself, and now my son plays for the national team in cricket. And so when I retired after playing for 20 plus years, I felt that I would like to document my experience, my history, my parents' journey on sports, because I realized that when we were traveling around the world, and you would see, as you just drove out of the airport, you would see huge billboards of the superstars of that country. Yeah. And so they were made to look larger than life. You went to the bookshops, you would see books on them, posters on them, you see television ads on them. So there was a huge promotion that was going on and making their sports personalities respected and given the due credit of what contribution they do for their country. So I said to myself, when I come back, I would like to give back to sports. Of course, one would be into the administration, but that's another subject. I did not want to go, but I'm sure you're going to bring that up. So I decided I'm going to do something on my own where I can be able to make a decision. So I started producing a sports magazine in the year 2000, and to date we are doing it for the last 2 decades, 20 plus years. And of course it's on complimentary, and it's the only consistent sports magazine in the country. And then I started planning to do a book, and then an Indian filmmaker came to see me and said that he feels that there should be a documentary on my family, and of course I laughed it out at that very stage, because I would have never even thought of a documentary. I mean, it was a completely foreign, and it's not for us. I mean, I thought, no, that's too big for us. You know, we are okay with magazine and a little bit of writing. So he convinced me and my family that he would like to do it. So after a long discussion and contemplating through the whole thing in terms of the finance and so many other logistics, we produced a documentary called The Karims, A Sporting Dynasty. And so that documentary went around the film festivals around the world, and I was invited to India in New Delhi. So my wife and myself went there as their guests, and the documentary premiered in Delhi. And it was purely a sports film festival. So as we were watching excellent, inspiring stories, it just struck to me and her that Kenyans, we have good stories of our sports heroes, if not better. We are world stars. I mean, in the last 50, 60 years, our Kenyans have done fantastically. But do we have anything on record? We don't. So I said to myself, as the book was the project we were doing, that as soon as I complete that, we would go into a sports film festival. And that was the birth of the film festival in 2018.
This is the book, The Karim's Sporting Dynasty. And once I actually went through it, well, I've gone through it a couple of times since Sunday, of course, throughout the festival. And what caught my eye is something you've also mentioned about documentation, because in the book you have pictures not only of you but also your family, your father, who was also a sportsman in the country, and your son, as you mentioned, he plays for the Kenya cricket team, the juniors. But in the same breath, talking about documentation, the concept you're bringing along, the one you're trying to promote, is about sports film, actually making films to document our sportsmen and sportswomen in the country. But at the moment, what kind of traction do you think it has the possibility of gaining, considering even in written form, we actually also have a problem in, let's say, documenting our sportsmen, even in written form, in books and whatnot?
I think the opportunities are enormous in that field because we have not done anything. Yet we have so much material over the last 50 years, and it's important that we capture it before it's too late. I mean, as I mentioned the other day, that when I was speaking to some young creative people, and I said, we need to do documentaries on people like Naftali Temu and Kipchoge Keino, and they gave me a surprised look. So it's like they didn't even know who these people are. So yes, we are totally zero, I would say, on that. It's very limited in what we have done. So I feel that there is a great opportunity for the sports industry and the film industry, the creative industry, to come together. Because we have enough stories to write, enough stories to talk about, enough feature films to do about.
At this moment, I'm guessing, of course, having been pushing the idea for the last 3 years in Kenya, let's say, what has been the best way, according to you, the way you've looked at the whole sports industry in Kenya, what do you think is the best way to actually approach these sportsmen and women, considering that, well, most of them are camera shy, to say the least? So how do you plan to go about that? Be it making a documentary about an individual sportsman or woman, or even featuring, whole clubs, football clubs, rugby clubs. You also have, even athletes also have their own, clubs, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's a good point you made. It's again a matter of awareness. We need to create awareness. We need to educate the public, and this festival objective was that, is to educate the public on how sports and film can be put together. I mean, if we received over 1,300 movies from 108 countries, and Kenya had only 14, it tells you that we are behind. So it's important that the stakeholders get engaged, have conversations, which has already started. From the time we started in 2018 to now, there are already conversations taking place on how we can do sports documentaries on our stars, or sports documentaries on football teams or clubs that have done over the world, because that's something that needs to be done. So it is already a work in progress. It's not an event, as I keep saying that. This is a process. It's a process that needs to be having continuous dialogue, continuous discussion, and as I said, the film industry right now is very much supporting on this matter. The budgets are also quite good from the government, and so right now, in fact, the Kenya Film Commission is also promoting in various areas for the creative industry, including creating an empowerment fund. So the Film Commission is now giving money to filmmakers. So I would appeal to the filmmakers to go apply for this, present your documents on what you can do in the film industry. And I'm sure if there are good stories and the Kenya Film Commission will support it. So it's an engagement, it's a conversation, but I'm very, very optimistic that we will achieve this target.
As a former sportsman, and moving along with sports film as a concept, what do you think are the most important beats that need to be documented about sportsmen?
I think it's an all-inclusive thing on this matter. But remember, we have all watched a sports movie. We've all gone to a cinema, and when we come out of the theater, we are very inspired. We are fired up. We are, and we feel so good about it. So it's a very important avenue to bring back the youths. We need to give them a platform. Also to say that sports is very important part of one's life. And sports now is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So is the creative industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So you're putting these two platforms together, which meets the president's agenda. So it's a perfect platform. A, you're going to create jobs. B, you're going to honor our sports heroes who I call them the unsung heroes of this country. They need to be given the due respect, and that can only be done by documenting about them, talking about them, so that we also let the youngsters know the history of where we have come from and where we need to go. So I think that the sky is the limit. The opportunities are plenty. It just needs us to put our heads together, and a lot can be achieved.
How can we ensure that in the future we can mold these young athletes and sportsmen, all that? How can we ensure that we mold them into leaders, sports leaders?
It's very important that we must first accept and treat sports as a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if it's a business, you must employ the right people in the right position. It's not that because you have played sports means you are automatically to be in the system. You know, the governance is important. It's very, as you rightly said, that the young sportsmen and women must not only play sports now, but by extension, they need to have training on leadership. They need to understand that money making is difficult, but managing money is much more difficult. So there needs to have regular discussions, conversations, seminars to now treat as a package. Because you cannot just say that I'm just running or I'm playing cricket and that's it, and then when I'm done, I'll just get into the system. It does not work anymore like that.
Just a personal question. You said something interesting, that we should not just pick anyone because someone was in sports and put them in a position of leadership. So, which brings me to another question, a personal question, if you don't mind me asking, but you yourself, have you considered it? Let's say someone approached you, be it the president or the CS for sports, approached you and said, hey, do you mind working with us to maybe, shape the way forward for sports in the country? Do you believe you have the necessary requirements, since you, as you just mentioned a few seconds ago, not every sportsman or woman, just because they played a sport, just because they represent the country, doesn't mean that they are in a good position to actually be good when it comes to leadership?
Well, I mean, as a Kenyan and as a proud Kenyan who has served this country for almost 40 years from playing for the country, contributing with the sports magazine, now doing the film festival, it's my patriotic duty. If I am called by the president or by the appropriate ministry to give my views or my input on it, I regard that as my patriotic duty. I would definitely look at it, but I have my way of doing certain things, and I would want to put the structures in such a way that we make a success of what we are doing. So to answer your question, yes, I have never refused on the matter, but it has to be in a procedural manner.
I've seen all the pictures in your office, of course, of all the during the time you were representing Kenya in the sport of cricket, and I've noticed that from before it, actually we've made a couple of steps. We've made a couple of steps in ensuring everyone has been, everyone is inclusive, because the perception was it was a preserve of the Indian community. But then again, what can you say about how far we've come, considering later on we had the likes of Tikolo, Dumbe and all the former Kenya international who are actually legends?
Cricket's history is very long. Cricket first was played in Kenya, in Mombasa, in 1896. So we're talking about over 120 years since cricket was brought here by the colonial masters. And of course, and then the Indians came for the railway and the communities grew. So it was a sport primarily played by the British colony and the Indian community that came in. Until, I would say, in the late 70s, when the cricket was now promoted to the African cricket, again by default. All the private clubs are owned either by the whites or the Asians at that time. And the people living in the neighborhood is where, out of curiosity, they would go to the clubs and then start playing cricket with maize cobs and all. That's how the whole thing started. Yeah. And I remember my first trip in 1980 for the national team. We went to Zimbabwe. It had just become independent from Rhodesia, and President Mugabe was president then. And that was the first trip where we had 4 African cricketers play for the national team. So the inception of African cricketers to play for the country started way back in 1980, it's almost 40 years, and they've done fantastically well. I mean, the contribution that the African cricketers, the names you have given with the Odumbes and the Tikolos, the Sujis, the Obuyas, I mean, those are 4 or 5 families that have done proud to this country. Became international stars, as you rightly used the word legends, and they did proud, and as I said, we have done very well. Up to the 2003 World Cup, where we reached the semi-final. So the things have changed. Now there are more Africans playing in the sport, and I think it needs to be nurtured more. There is a lot of potential, but we need to put our house in order. There is a huge support internationally for Kenya. I mean, even the Indian cricketers who used to come and play here in the 80s and 90s.
Kenya International Sports Film Festival. Forgive me, I always come back to that because it's actually an initiative that I find very viable. And we had the 3rd edition, came to a close on Sunday. What's next now for the Kenya International Sports Film Festival? What's next up until next year when we shall be having the 4th edition?
I mean, the feedback again right now is enormous from the government side, from the media side, and even at the international level. I mean, this time we also had producers of the movies that we screened communicate to us virtually. So there's a lot of interest being shown. There are a lot of producers who are talking about how they can film in Kenya. So I have, of course, led them to the Kenya Film Commission. So conversation is going on. There is one film producer coming in next week, looking at a potential story of a sports organization, which I can't relate right now. So it's a work in progress. It's something we will continue. But of course, as rightly said, a once-a-year event cannot sustain or cannot put that much impact because people will either forget or have other priorities. So what we are now looking at, as I said, it's a work in progress. We are now looking at next year to see if we can open an online television sports channel and culture, so that we could have, like we had the panel discussions during the film festival along with the screening of the movies, so that we have a regular discussions on sports disciplines in this country, on the challenges that each organization is going through or the sportsmen they're going through, so that we make it a continuous dialogue. And as I said, with time, it's like a flake. And the snowball will take time. It starts with a flake. So we have reached to a small snowball. It's a work in progress, and I'm sure in the next couple of years, it will be something that all Kenyans will be talking about and will want to follow what we are doing.
Okay, that has been Aasif Karim, former international cricket stay in Kenya as well as tennis, talking to us about the concept of sports film in the country, which includes documenting everything we have achieved so far as a nation, be it in athletics, be it in rugby, be it in cricket, tennis, all sports disciplines really, what we've achieved so far. And also Kenya International Sports Film Festival, he is the director, he is the founder, so maybe we hope that his experience as a sportsman in this country will actually guide the way forward in his endeavor of promoting sports film in the country. Well, that's it for this interview, but always remember to get more information via our website and all the news and updates. That is www.kbc.co.ke.